You're listening to the Light Over Time podcast with David Sargent and Korey Bartos. It is May 21st, and I no longer care that much about Sony. Morning. How are you?
Good morning. 1 p.m. 1 p.m. is morning now. Let's do this.
It's morning in California.
Sure.
How are you, man?
I'm as good as I'm going to be today.
Fair enough. So for those of you listening and watching right now, we did not record last week. It was Mother's Day. I was visiting my mom, and it got chaotic everywhere else as well. But what have you been drinking this morning?
Okay, so I've got a Ethiopia Gedeb on this morning for 1 p.m. And it's got the plum, the stone fruit stuff going on, a little hazelnut almondy finish. It's very, very rounded. I don't know if I had this one last week. I might have. It's very good, but I'm almost out of it.
Right on, right on. I actually got a few bags of coffee from factory, and I pre-ground some last night before leaving Evan's house because I didn't bring my grinder home. But yeah, this is it's called Amazonas. It is a Peru. It's a pretty solid medium. A little sweet on the end, kind of milk chocolatey. It's good.
Yeah. Peru, for the simplicity that they offer, always, for whatever reason, just on. I like the Perus.
It's not bad. It's never like I could never drink that again and be happy. It's usually like, that's good.
Right.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So obviously we can get into it a little bit, but if you've been working on anything, have you watched anything? What's going on in the photo content space?
So let's see. I want to say it was just after we had our last show, maybe a day or two after. We had a very, very short experience with Northern Lights. The date was May 10th, and what's today? The 20th. So 10 or 11 days ago. So yeah, it could have been a little bit after our last show.
Yep.
And I went out to Fisherman's as I normally do because it's such a great spot, only 5 minutes from my house. And there were a couple other photographers there, and I showed up. And just like the time before, these other photographers, when I introduced myself, because I usually, when I see like another pair of tripods or whatever, I'll go hang out and see what's up and ask the names and see what they've seen. And they were like, "We were just talking about you. We were wondering if you were going to be out here. We were wondering if we were invading your space." And I'm like, "No, it's all good. This place is big enough for all of us." So we hung out. 3 of them were riding together, and they stuck it out until about midnight. We had a little bit of Northern Lights, and then after they left at around 1 a.m., they went down to the lighthouse towards downtown in Charlevoix. And when the show's good enough, you can see the Northern Lights from the South Pier in that area. And I stuck it out in Fisherman's until then and got the Northern Lights as it flared up for a second time. It was pretty good. It was a really, really good night. Super calm still. It was just so nice to be out there. And I did get confirmation that piping plovers are nesting again back at Fisherman's, and that's a species that I like to keep my eye on because they've been endangered for a while, and the numbers are slowly creeping back up. And last year was the first year I'd seen them here in Charlevoix nesting, so really, really good to see them just pulling those numbers back up across the Great Lakes, and they are back again. So I'll keep my eyes on them. But yeah, that's about all the shooting I've done all week.
Fair enough. You been watching anything good?
I watched, plenty of the Z8 stuff, and we'll get to that.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's about it.
That's right on. As you know now, I've been rocking the 2X teleconverter this week. So I've been kind of playing around with that. We'll get into it shortly, but I posted some birds in the backyard, and there was a decent chunk of them. So that was fun. And then I watched last night as I was editing some stuff and going through some footage, the Mami Amigos, which is like Grainy Days and his buddy Caleb, had their 4th episode. It's a pretty decent photo podcast. They are talking to cool people, but they had a guy named Jason. Yeah, it's called Mami Amigos. The link will be in the show description, but it's on episode 4. Very good.
Cool.
And they're talking to this guy, Jason Roman, who is a Leica photographer. And he kind of tells a story about how he became a Leica photographer. Like, he works with Leica. But he also runs around with Jason Momoa and does like a bunch of Jason Momoa's personal photography stuff and like works with him, which is kind of wild. Seems like a cool dude. It was a good episode. Some cool insight on like a little bit of street photography, a little bit of how you get into the space. Obviously, there's a little bit of knowing people, but like really putting yourself out there and shooting some stuff if you're trying to get into a certain type of photography. So it's pretty cool. It's a good episode. I definitely recommend checking out their podcast. Yeah, good stuff.
Anything else you've been watching?
No, mostly just that. Been playing around with the camera stuff a little bit, and then I've been trying to make sure that I watch at least one movie a week. Because I kind of stopped watching movies. I would just watch like YouTube stuff, and then it was like I wasn't getting inspired like I normally would. So a Cloverfield, the 2008 original Cloverfield movie, is one of my favorite films of all time. Matt Reeves absolutely crushed that, and I watched that Friday night, and then yesterday I went over to Evan and Hope's house and we watched the Cloverfield Paradox. And not as good as the first one, obviously, and it was kind of a retconned movie, if you're familiar with how it came to be. But I enjoyed that they ran anamorphics on the Shepherd, and they ran spherical lenses on Earth. Always fun little Easter eggs to look at, and it's just it is a pretty movie for what I think is pretty like relatively low budget anyway. Obviously, it was a Netflix movie and stuff like that, but yeah, just doing that kind of thing. It's not too bad.
Nice. Well, if you don't mind, I guess I should probably explain why we're not in Detour recording this episode. Huh?
Sure, yeah, let's get into that.
I don't mind because we should have been, and I'm really not pleased with the fact that I'm not there, that we're not there. So about a week and a half ago, my kid brought home a cold basically from school, and this is something that happens on the regular with kindergartners. Just is what it is, and we deal with it as it comes. And they got sick, and then I got it a little bit after. And it's not like a crazy bad cold, or it wasn't. Got a little bit of a cough and sniffles and all that stuff. And I was starting to get over it. And then last Thursday comes, and I was pretty much over it, or so I thought. And I did my farmer's market, and I made a huge mistake of not eating a meal at all, and not bringing any water with me to do my farmer's markets, and sitting in the sun for 6 hours, no water, and I guess still a little bit of illness, although I had basically no cough, no sniffles, nothing, no congestion at all. I brought myself to the point of actual dehydration, and by the end of the day, I was like incoherent. I wasn't really able to talk, or I was like, I got the shakes and the chills and the aches and all that stuff, and so I had to go to urgent care. And the combination of full-on dehydration plus still having this like viral respiratory illness cold that my daughter brought home just like kicked that back up into full force, and now I'm like sick again. So I guess when you're like fully dehydrated, your immune system basically has nothing to stand on.
Turns out.
So that just whipped right back up. And if you can hear me kind of like sniffling, maybe coughing once in a while, that's why. And the first thing I realized once I like had my wits about me again was, man, I'm super glad that happened here when I had the ability to just get myself over to urgent care instead of the next day, when I'm certain I would have pushed myself too hard the next day in the UP, away from everybody basically, and no resources, and certainly away from a hospital within like 100 miles or something like that. So I'm grateful that happened then, and I'm dealing with it. And it sucked to have to make the decision to not go to the UP, but it is what it is.
Yeah, so. Indeed. Gotta take care of yourself. That's why we say hydrate or dihydrate.
That's right. I'm usually a hydro homie, but I forgot my water, and I won't be forgetting it again.
Yeah, that's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
I've only teetered with like true dehydration once out in the desert in Utah, and now I will not ever. If wild, I have any opportunity to hydrate myself, I do, because like, it's scary stuff.
It is scary. It's like you get nausea and dizzy, and like so many weird biological things start happening that you think like you just don't even think. I didn't think it wasn't due to like lack of water for 6 hours. I was like, what is going on with me? And doc's like, you need fluids like right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think the scariest thing about being dehydrated when I was in the desert was that like I couldn't bring myself to just keep going. And it's like, it's wild. I was like, nah, dude, you guys can go if you want. And they're just, no, we can't. Like,
Wow.
we can't, dude. What do you mean? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. Because you're just like, that's it.
Wow.
It was scary and wild. But we got through it. It was cool.
Yeah.
Intense stuff. But yeah, I'm glad you're good. It would have been nice to be out there, but I actually took the opportunity to make sure I did nothing this weekend. So like yesterday, we just big hung out like the whole day.
That's cool.
And I really needed that. So I'm glad
That's
that
great.
I was able to just like shift gears into a way that was productive for myself. Productive mentally, right? Like you just need to decompress. And I haven't done that in a couple months. So
Yeah.
so that was pretty good. Another thing I was going to get into is the thing that I forget to do most often is utilize photography to like brighten up somebody else's day. And I've been crashing at this house for a few months now, right? And they have this giant schnauzer who I've been like attempting to photograph for so long. And you know, all black fur, big
Yeah.
eyebrows and stuff. So it's kind of hard to get like a good photo when you're using a phone and stuff in natural light. It's basically impossible. He's just a phantom, and and I took him outside for a couple of times. He's really camera shy. Like if you even bring it around, he freaks out. But I grabbed the 70-200 one day, brought him and Yoshi outside, and just like hung out across the yard and snapped a couple of really good photos. They're up on my Instagram, but I had printed one out as an 8x10 on matte, like nice photo paper for the people that I live with currently, and they love it, and it turned out really nice. The printing is awesome. I used Printique. If any of you are familiar, pretty decent prices, and you know, pretty fast turnaround, which is nice. I've been happy with all of my prints I've gotten from them, but it always surprises me how much I enjoy gifting photos that I take to people and then looking at my work printed. It's super important. I think everybody needs to do it more, and big recommend. It was nice.
I can relate. I've gifted prints to plenty of people, and a lot of people in the past have bought prints from me. And purchasing is very different from gifting. Gifting prints feels just great, especially when you know that the person will have a connection to whatever the image is, like the dog. One of the things I really love to do when I do a wedding, which is rare these days, I try to bring either my Polaroid One Step Plus, which is like a new modern Polaroid body, or I'll bring my old SX70, which is from the 70s, both of which still function perfectly. And I'll take a full pack of film for either of them and hand off whatever I get to the bride and groom by the end of the night. And they love that. They don't pay for that. They don't know that I'm doing that. None of them expect it at all. And I consider it a gift, but it's just part of the work for me, really.
Sure.
But by the end of the night, I'm always getting the best moments on digital because I need to. But when those moments linger, I'll think very quickly about whether or not I have time to open up the camera, if it's the SX70, get it in focus real quick, because it's not, it's got some depth of field, so I have to understand where I'm at and then snap a shot. And if it turns out, man, those are the most rewarding little instant prints to be able to hand off. I had one a couple of years ago now with the SX70 where I got the bride and the father of the bride was giving his speech, and it was making both of them cry, and I got them both in the frame with instant print shot and handed that off, and that was like probably the most memorable print I've ever given anyone, and It was right in the moment. It was so cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really would like to get instant film again. I played with it way back in the day. Just ends up being expensive, and I don't do anything.
It is.
That said, I did bust this guy out again, which, if you're listening to the show, I'm holding up my Zenit 12 SD, an old USSR camera, and I have, it looks like 5 more shots on it. And so this is now at about 16 months, and I'm really excited to get rid of that. I think I have Ultramax 400 in this right now. Really excited. I have no idea what's on this. I was still seeing my last girlfriend when this film roll started. I had been to camp with this film roll, all sorts of places. So Really excited to get that film back and then start another roll. But I think I want to try and do quarterly, like 4 rolls a year. Nothing crazy because film's really expensive, but I think the next, I'm going to put some Ilford in here next and just do black and white. But that said, black and white, I'm going to extend our submissions for 1 week because it's been kind of chaotic, and
Sure.
I wasn't sure until yesterday or whatever that we were going to shoot today. So we'll do that one more time. I'll promote it a little bit this week and just try to get some, maybe even just like friends that do photography so we can talk about them and get that started. But
Sure.
I also haven't got a shot yet. So slacking over here, freaking slacking. So that'll give me a few more days to kind of get something that I like. But yeah, I'm starting to feel in my loins actually enjoying photography again. I've been listening to people, how they tell their stories, what that means to them. Listening to some people, especially like Jason Roman in that episode of Mi Amigos, talk about why it's almost disingenuous to his photography to record video of him doing like street photography, because it takes away a lot of the mystery of images, which is really cool. And I was thinking about it and I was like, I guess that does make sense, because like the best video for photography stuff is like guys doing wilderness or landscape where they can't really control anything, or like studio stuff where it's like all control, where like but when you're trying to do like, I'm going to record a video of me doing street photography, which is like a pretty big trend right now. There's a lot of street photography people. Why I've never related to that content, because it's either them just walking around a city and getting like really bad city shots. Sorry, street photographers. There's a lot of you who aren't doing any meaningful work, in my opinion. They're just out there snapping photos.
Which of samey stuff.
Which is cool, like snap photos or whatever, but like no storytelling being had.
It can be very good and unoriginal.
Well,
that's a thing.
A technically perfect image doesn't tell a story.
Sure.
Charts don't tell stories. Like that's why sample galleries often are kind of just like sample galleries. It's like I'm looking at sharpness and bokeh and depth of field. Like, cool. How's the CA look? That's what a lot of street photography ends up being. And the mystery in that, and portraits and stuff, because they don't need to necessarily tell a story, but I love looking at portraits of people. Always have, always will. And it's starting to help me reframe what I don't necessarily need to focus on when trying to tell stories with photos, and where those images are. It's narrowing that again. I'm like focused, and that's like really nice, because it's making me want to pick up my film camera. It's making me want to grab my 35 and my A7 IV and like just shoot some stuff. So that's pretty cool. I'm really excited about that.
That's great.
Yeah.
I really, if I can, actually, it's not too bad for me right now if I could just grab my 150 to 600 and just walk back out to the trail. Although Detour was a great spot for migratory bird stop-offs, and there's a lot of warblers I was hoping to see again this year. I can't hang on that for too long, but I do want to get out before I miss the full spring migration. And there's plenty I can get here in Charlevoix, and in East Jordan as well. So I will try to do that, but man, I'm trying to give my body as much time as needed, but this thing is just lingering. So eventually we'll get there.
Well, I have a question for you. So what are you doing next weekend? Do you have any plans?
I have a wedding on Saturday.
Oh, you got a wedding on Memorial Day?
I have a wedding next week, so I'm really trying to give my body as much as I can. Yeah.
What a monster.
I'll be in Travers all day Saturday.
Right on. So that means no Saturday coffee farmers market?
That's correct.
Dang.
I'm not too happy about that either. Yeah. But you know what? The wedding made a lot more money, so it is what it is.
Right on. Well, if you're feeling up to it, and you're okay Sunday, I'd be willing to drive up, do a little shooting, and record an episode.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
Because I don't have work Monday because we take Memorial Day off. So that could be fun. Whether
Oh, yeah.
whether I knock out up there, come back that day, it doesn't really matter to me, but it could be fun.
Yeah.
So I still want to do a live episode or a episode together in person.
Together episode.
Yeah, and get some shooting done. So make some content,
Yeah.
make some coffee, do the thing. So
that sounded just as fun to me as being into tour. So I would still love to do that.
Cool. Yeah. So I'd be happy to leave really early on Sunday and get up there, before noon and make some coffee and then go out and hit some of your trails and stuff.
Sounds good.
Because I think I'm trying to decide, moving into the next thing, if this 2X teleconverter is worth keeping.
Yeah, I saw your stories.
So obviously it's fine. It does okay. Surprisingly, no hit on autofocus. Like, it seems to
That's
just
what
be
I was curious about.
super snappy, super sticky, detecting birds' eyes. No real qualms with that. It does kind of have the like shot through a window look. There are times where it's degraded a lot more than I would expect because it's just such a sharp lens.
Can I ask if there was additional crop on those stories pictures?
All of them were shot in 3.2, horizontal, so they were mostly just cropped in vertically.
Okay.
But I wasn't losing a lot of resolution on them.
Sure.
I mean, that was like 15 feet away, sitting either on the back porch or through the window, depending on the image. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely fine, but it's also still $500.
Yeah.
And I don't know that for as often as I'll use it and how picky I am, like $500 is getting near the 150 to 600. You know what I mean? Like, I could just get an even longer and damn decent lens for when I want to break out the long boy. So I don't know. It's a tough call. I'm not super thrilled. Every once in a while I get a decently sharp image, but those shots, if I remember correctly, are like north of 1/2000 and higher. So like, it's not a shutter thing.
Right.
It's just like, it is what it is. You're putting glass through glass.
Sorry, if just like I've been dealing with, I think when you get into like the 2X, because I've done research on these 1.4s and 2Xs for a long time, because I've been into wildlife and I've wanted to use them for other things. I've been reading reviews for years on these, and I've never pulled the trigger on one. I've always read that 1.4s are the way to go because they're just, at least in the DSLR world, they always were the better performer as far as AF. And then the 2X always seemed to leave sharpness on the table for, and it's a physics thing. It's just, I think that's what it comes down to. It's not that you're degrading the lens. It's just a physics thing between the sensor, the focal length, all these things. And that feeling of this image looks like it was shot through a window, I always kind of like got that, which is why I never pulled the trigger on a 2X, and I never felt like 40% more focal length was worth spending money on a teleconverter, right? So that's why I've always just gone for the cheap wildlife lenses, like the Tamrons and on the DSLR days, the 150 to 600, and then I got the Nikon. The Nikon was supremely sharp on the D850, and yes, the resolution has something to do with it, but I absolutely believe for whatever reason the 200 to 500 on that Nikon system was fantastically sharp. And Nikon's got experience with making very sharp wildlife lenses, and I'm sure some of that experience trickled down into that range. I think it's a $1,200 or $1,300 lens, something like that. I got it for $9, but even used, mine was just fantastically sharp. And now I'm back on the Sony system with a little bit less resolution, but plenty. And the Sigma, I have to pick at it, stop down a little bit, make sure my shutter speed's much higher. I have to update to that new firmware if it's out. I was going to check today. I haven't seen if it's out yet. But, if I'm very, very picky about the settings, I can get sharp images, but not as freely as I used to be able to on the Nikon for whatever reason. I don't know. It's a physics thing. It's a like everything's got to be perfect type of thing. Sometimes for the ultimate sharpness, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, for me, I'm finding that like maybe just like 2x is not worth the trouble, because honestly, I'm gonna do some tests, but I'm pretty sure the crop is probably fine for a lot of social stuff. And you said something when you messaged me that the compression is gonna be different, but it's actually not gonna be that.
Is it really not?
Because it's still going up to 5.6. You know what I mean? And that lens is a 2.8, so it's gonna basically be a wash as far as compression looks and things like that. I'm pretty sure. I'm obviously gonna test it on some stationary.
It might be some in between.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that like as sharp as that lens goes, I think on its best day, a crop from 33 megapixels is probably gonna be fine. And I did some stuff at the 15 megapixel APS-C crop. And it's fine.
It'll be 100% fine. Back when I first started researching this, I was using a 16 megapixel body, and so cropping then was an issue.
Yeah,
it's just not anymore.
And I definitely agree that like 40% more, like that's not worth it for me to have to take the teleconverter and put it on the lens and all that stuff. I just don't see how it's the same.
I've never understood the logic.
I mean, when you're really trying to squeeze out that and you know exactly where your focal length needs to be and stuff, and you're putting really expensive glass on it, like I'm sure there is something to it. But for me, it's the same price as the 2x teleconverter. Like you're still spending like $548 on.
See, I didn't even know that because I have just no interest. That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's like for not very much, like I'm cropping, I think. Like I just think I'm cropping. So it's hard to say, because like once you get up to 600, that's when I really started feeling like I was getting really telephoto. I can't say that like these images are like look better than my 7D with the 70 to 300.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
that's rough.
Right. And like the 70 to 300 I had, that was the USM. It's a good lens. The 7D was a great camera.
But we're beyond that now, and you'd hope for better.
Yeah, and I was, I don't know. It's a really, 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 really stellar performing lens without the teleconverter, so it's just hard for me to justify. And it sucks because my freaking Shimoda bag, the mirrorless cube that I have, it fits vertically the body in the 70 to 200 perfect, so I can't put it away in my bag with the teleconverter on it. It's just too long, which is
Is that like a 30 or 35 liter bag?
I think it's technically a 30-liter bag, but it has a cube, so it's
gotcha.
You don't get 30 liters of like storage. It's the roll top is where all of the storage area is. So I'm considering going to the large cube or buying a new bag. That's a totally different story altogether, though. But we'll get some more tests in. I wanna play around. It's okay. My brain is stupid, so I'm thinking, okay, this is $500. I can put that towards the 200 to 600 again, or get the 150 to 600. And I there's a part of me that thinks I'll probably be happier. Because if I'm going to spend money at all, I might as well go really, really telephoto. And honestly, 400 is not that much further than 200. I think 70 to 140 is quite a big difference, but that 200 to 400, it's not that big. When I was shooting the 200 to 600, I was either at 200 or between like 520 and 600.
That's exactly where I live.
Yeah, I figured. And I'm really far out or I'm all the way back. And there's that in between isn't that important to me.
Right. I very rarely in between unless something comes up really close or I find some landscape thing for some reason that 300 or whatever seems appropriate. I'm always at like 550 basically.
Yeah, that's fair. And I don't know, we'll get into that, especially if I can go up there and we'll shoot some stuff. It'll be nice to stack that up and maybe use your 150 to 600 a little bit and compare just IQ at like 400-ish and then maybe crop mine up to 600 and see what that might look like, right?
And we can stick the 2X on the 150 to 600 and see what 1200 does.
Is it compatible? Do you know?
I'd have no idea.
Yeah. It'd be fun. But yeah, I think shooting side by side at around 400 and then me cropping to 600, and then seeing that lens natively at 600, I'd be really curious to see what that IQ difference is. If it's almost nothing, then like I guess it's a wash. I'll just use the teleconverter because it's, it is what it is at that point, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Kind of a wash. But yeah, you had mentioned the Nikon 200 to 500, and Canon looks like they confirmed a 200 to 500 f4L, which they're gunning for.
That's wild.
For that space. So they got the 100 to 300 f2.8, which is obviously like $10,000, and this is not going to be cheap either. This is probably going to be around that $10,000 mark.
I thought the same thing.
But it's a 200 to 500 f4.
It'll sell.
Oh yeah. I mean,
they won't be able to make enough.
They're working out the freaking pro long lenses for sports and
like
wildlife and all that.
500 f4 is still like a $10,000 lens.
Yeah.
So a 200 to 500 f4 is unimaginable. Yeah. Honestly, it's gonna be. I don't know. I would think it would be just absolutely massive.
I mean, so the Sigma's 200 to 500 f2.8, that crazy green bazooka, is massive. This is a stop. Yeah. This is a stop. Like, stop down. You know what I mean? That's not a major jump.
I mean, they've made some engineering progress with like handling physics and things like that, but I just can't imagine it's going to be compact in any way.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be.
And it won't. It's going to be a chunk, but it's exciting because they're talking about the fact that the R5 might be replaced by two different bodies. And like, this is where if Nikon's going to do what we want them to do, they're going to have to start sprinting. They can't just drop the Z7 and like,
be
like,
it's time to go.
It's like, all right, well then what are you doing? Because like, it's a stellar camera. We're stoked. What new glass are you going to drop? What are you going to do to kind of get that market share back from Canon? Because that makes the Canon system with like the R3 or whatever the next R5 is super compelling for just about every type of shooter. I'm going to be excited to see some of the sports stuff Jared does with that, because I know he'll take it out for like a Phillies game or something.
Oh,
and, it's like 200 to 500 is clutch at f4. That's going to be a fast lens. Imagine that with a teleconverter.
Jeez.
Yeah. Just gnarly. Just freaking gnarly. But super cool. Things are getting exciting again. The ZV-2, which it should be called. I hope it's not the ZV-1II, because that's stupid.
They're starting to merge with the Xperia type naming, and it's getting a little murky. I don't like that.
Sub $1,000 or around $1,000 vlogging camera. That's an 18 to 70 millimeter, which is like, this is way cooler than the ZV-E1 in all regards, because the ZV-1 was a cool camera, and I like flirted with getting one for a long time. But 18 to 70 equivalent is sick.
Yeah. That's a fixed lens, right? Or would
be? Yeah. As in, like, not interchangeable, yes.
Right.
For sure. It's a 1-inch sensor camera. It's not a APS-C camera.
So I'm curious if that's a 1-inch sensor camera, if Sony has the ability with their sensor development technology now to take that dual layer thing they've been working on that they just produced for the new Xperia phone, if that's compatible or translatable right now for a 1-inch. Is it a 1-inch sensor in that Xperia phone?
I'm not sure,
because I know there's 1-inch sensors in a couple of phones, and they're getting to that point. I'm curious if that's translatable to a 1-inch sensor in a camera like this camera would be, because that technology suggests some serious improvements for dynamic range and ISO performance. So that will be interesting to see. Yeah,
and then you match that with that focal range.
That range is
with
nice.
with their AI autofocus and all that stuff.
It covers a lot of bases.
It's gonna be a kill, because I still want just a baby camera. To take out whenever I go anywhere that can fit in any of my small bag, my pocket, whatever the heck. And
that's going to be announced in a couple of days, right?
I think so. Yeah. I'll have the link down below, but maybe it should be. It's the next camera, I believe, that they're announcing.
Right.
And I like that spot for it. I would have liked the ZV-E1 if it was closer to an FX30. and had all that stuff and wasn't too grand. If it was like, you know, $1,800 or just below that, and it was like infringing on that, not a freaking A7S III. Because I want it to be way smaller than it is. I want it to do pretty good stuff, and then just I would live with the shutter and everything like that. You know what I mean? It's cool. So this camera's exciting. I think there's a lot of room for what I want to be doing with a second camera that I could use when I'm out shooting, and use that for my like vlogging video thing to do photography and to do other stuff.
Sure.
I think it'd be sick at work. I'm super into it. So hopefully that works out really well and they crush it, because the ZV-1 still gets a lot of love. You know, which it should. It's a stellar camera, and I will
be. Yeah, I mean, it could be great. I will be really interested to see if this is the camera they announce, which it probably will be, if they have a handle on thermals, because we know the ZV-1 is not great in any kind of weather that isn't cold weather, as far as like continuous recording goes. So we'll see if this ZV-2 or whatever this is going to be called has any better thermal performance than the ZV-1.
Well, they don't go too crazy. I think the ZV-1 was decent. So I mean, it's much smaller, right? You're not dealing with.
When did that launch? Years ago, right?
A couple now, yeah, at least 2. I think it was like at the beginning of COVID, actually.
Okay.
All
right.
It's been around for a bit, because then I think the ZV-E10 has been out for 2 years.
Okay.
But which also is a cool camera. I think that I don't know that it'll have thermal issues. I just want to know if it's going to do 4K 60, because that'd be huge, like a good 4K 60, and or if it's just going to be like 4K 24. I'd like it to be 30. I do a lot of 4K 30 now because I'm a nerd, but yeah, it seems sweet. I'm excited. That's where the vlogging line should go, is making a really sick fixed lens, tiny point and shoot. People like the point and shoots and stuff, and I love it. We'll see what happens.
While we're talking about Sony, I have not kept up on this back and forth firmware stuff. There's been like things talked about as far as what's getting what, and like what their policies might, because I've heard that Sony's talking about changing the way that they communicate firmware development. Do you know anything about what's up to date on how this has been progressing?
I do not. I don't know that anybody does properly.
Sure.
I believe that the initial things will be paid thing wasn't a fully true rumor.
That's what I saw.
And yeah, I want to make it clear that like I don't think they should have to update the cameras with all the new crazy cinema stuff, but it is still kind of disgusting to me that Breathing Comp isn't on their flagship and stuff.
That's the big one to me.
That's because that's the usability one with their glass and stuff. And I think it's dumb that they haven't said anything. Even if
that one firmware update is attached to tens of thousands of dollars of other pieces of invested equipment.
Yeah.
Like that's. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll let you go.
Yeah. It's just lame. It's lame that they haven't. Even if they said, "Hey, we're working on a couple of bug fixes, and we're gonna do a thing to give Breathing Comp and stuff to the A7S III and the A1 by July or something," right? Like it'll be done soon. That's something, but like to just
sometime this year.
But I just
people at ease.
I just hate when people don't say anything. Even Fuji actually like talked about supply shortages and stuff being why they can't keep like the XT5 in stock and things like that. It's like I just want some transparency if I'm gonna be spending tens of thousands of dollars. I spend at least $500 a freaking quarter on Sony stuff. Like I'm spending money regularly to get new stuff and to do it. You know, I talk about my use of Sony and things like that. Like I don't feel like I should be entitled to anything, but I think they should do better at supporting. Like I pay for like a pro support and stuff, man. Like this isn't like I just like buy once and then never talk to them again. Like this is like my third year on pro support. Like I use their services and things like that. I just want them to back their shit up. And like I wish I still had an A7S III. and I just can't have one if it's going to be the way it is. Like I realized recently the S Cinetone second ISO at 2000, I miss that desperately.
Sure.
I'd go back to an A7S III right now for that alone. Because I just use S Cinetone for so much stuff at work and things like that, and it's like now I think it's 125 and 500 on the A7S or the A7 IV. That's not a lot. The ISO sensitivity is much worse. And going back to me testing out the teleconverter, dude, the first time I've been running silent shutter for something, and the freaking rolling shutter, man.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's brutal.
It's so bad.
It's like the top half of the shot is good, but then like the freaking birdhouse is.
Do you remember those images I shared with you trying to figure that out?
Yeah,
it was so horrible.
At like 13200 shutter and stuff.
It does not matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's like that's bad. And the way I would get around that is I would take 12 megapixel A7S III photos, and I'd be very happy with them. Because it's faster. It's so fast, and I can't because I sold it, which was the right move at the time because now they're very cheap. I saw a FX3 for about $2,800. I almost bought because I was like, ooh, that's cheap. Has all the cinema features I want, but then I'd have to get an external monitor, so it's not that cheap. Because you literally can't see that screen outside. Sorry, everyone, you can't. You have to run an external monitor with that thing.
Yeah. So we don't need to make this the Sony show again. We've done that a few times. I would love to bring it back to Nikon because there's an obvious talking point we could talk about.
Sure, what's up?
We could talk about the Z8.
I mean, I wish there was more to talk about with the Z8. Like, they put the Z9 into a smaller, more usable body, and it's sick. And I hope people use it. But it's still a $4,000 camera, so like.
I understand. The conversation of the relationship between the Z9 and Z8 is totally acceptable because it is a little Z9. It really just is. You know what's crazy to me? The Z8 with the grip is much bigger than the Z9. Well, it's ridiculously bigger. It's like comically bigger. Right. Like they did it on purpose. Because if you're just going to get this, you might as well spend the money and get a Z9. Like I know they did it on purpose.
Sure.
This thing's just going to make this thing too chunky.
But people love the ergonomics of that thing without the battery grip. Everybody's like, feels like a DSLR, feels great.
Yeah.
So, hell yeah.
So, but I actually like to maintain the perspective of talking about the Z8 in relation to the D850 because it is the true successor to the D850 finally. It packs all of the performance that the D850 had really into mirrorless finally. Not that the Z9 didn't, but it's at finally the D850's relative price point. And I know there's a couple people who have talked to me about it who are wondering when we were going to talk about it, and this is it here, because there are a couple of you out there who might be interested in this Z8. It is finally like the professional camera that isn't the $6,000, $6,500 whatever camera. Like the Z8 is going to be what Nikon wedding shooters are going to aim for. You really want this or the Z9. Now, the Z8 does look fantastic. It's got everything, 45 megapixel stacked BSI sensor. And the stacked part of that is really important because that makes the Z8 the cheapest stacked sensor option available on the market for full frame cameras, which is pretty cool. And that's only cool if you know there's a reason that you would benefit from that, such as things like rolling shutter, and what is it, like the lighting, like, you know, flickering. You can deal with some of that. I was reading a little bit about variable, like multi different kinds of LED lighting and how stack sensors handle that, and apparently like that's still an issue. So we had talked about that, I think a couple of weeks ago, is like, oh, do stack sensors, apparently that's still a problem, and it kind of like handles one source but doesn't really know what to do when there's different frequencies from different sources. So It's still an issue, but it might alleviate some of the banding that you might get from that type of issue. But overall, the Z8 looks great. It is a little mini Z9, so you don't need us really to tell you all about it. If you know much about the Z9, it really just is a little Z9, which is not a bad thing at all. You're getting Z9 performance for like, what is it, 2/3 of the cost?
Right.
That ain't a bad deal.
Well, and it's going to be like this. So you have a bunch of F-mount glass, and you didn't think that the Z7 II was enough camera, and the Z9 was too much camera. And this is going to be the cheapest way for a Nikon shooter to get into a professional body that doesn't really have any compromises.
Right.
If you have a Z9 or a D850 rather, you correct me if I'm wrong, did that already have the CF Express?
It did.
XQD like situation, so you probably are fine there. Yeah, there's no true downside for a photographer other than potentially not having a mechanical shutter. But if you're a hybrid shooter, you basically don't have any real worry. I do want to say the A9 II comes in refurbished and used all day long for about $1,000 less than the Z8. And that does have a stack sensor, so if you're trying to, and a mechanical shutter that shoots at like 20 frames a second raw images, which is brutal. So there is still kind of a thing from Sony if you're, not there, but I don't know. I guess like kudos, Nikon did what they had to do, and now they just need to like roll with it hard as hell. And I don't know if that means they need to market it heavier to content creator people, professional photographers, or if they need to like really revamp and push some really sick glass out. I don't know what that is to be competitive, but they're close. I would say they're probably neck and neck with market share with Lumix at this point, with how amazing that marketing campaign went for the S5 II and the S5 IIX.
All right. I do want to clarify. Somebody did ask me this specific question about the memory card situation and what the CF Express Type B is, the XQD situation. The D850 had 2 slots, and this does as well. It's the same exact setup, and this person shoots Canon, and they have a dual slot SD card setup. And they asked me, can I just use my SD cards in the Z8 before it was announced? We knew this situation was going to be this type of memory slot thing. So let me clarify for that person. You are going to need to invest in either CF Express Type B cards or XQD cards to fit into the slot 1. You can use your current SD cards in slot 2, but those SD cards, I believe, don't fit into that XQD slot, if I remember correctly.
Correct, yes.
Right. So you cannot dual shoot your SD cards in this. You need to get either of those CF Express Type Bs or XQDs. And they're not cheap. Like very, very good SD cards are not cheap either. But the CF Express Type Bs and the very good XQDs that are going to match the performance and the high capacity, you're talking about a couple $100 that you may need to add on an additional investment if you're looking to jump from something like Canon's dual SD system or somebody else, if you don't have those cards already and you want to simultaneously shoot both those memory card slots. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and I mean, to go, I guess, a step further, I believe you can shoot most of the video codecs on the SD, but I know that the Nikon Z8 and the Z9 do not allow you to simultaneously record video, so it doesn't really matter that both, I guess, card slots aren't compatible with the same cards.
For video, sure, yep.
For video, yeah. What's really interesting is I'm surprised that I don't know if there's licensing issues or something, but the CF Express Type A hasn't taken off a little bit more. It's right. About half as fast as the Express Type B, but it's small and reverse compatible with SD cards. They have combo slots like in our A7.
I was waiting for that to take off,
A7 IV. I have one, and it's awesome because it's super fast. They're getting cheaper. Angel Fire, not Angel Fire. That's the old web service. Angel Bird, I believe, is the storage company that they now make for I think cheaper than my 160 gig tough card. They make a 1 terabyte Angel Bird CF Express Type A, which I'm kind of gonna look at because it'd be really sick to have 2 terabytes in my Sony. That'd be huge for video projects. But then it just gets to the point where a lot of people have said, like, okay, so now I have too much capacity and I leave them in so long. Am I doing it redundant? Am I just like stacking?
Right.
What's the longevity on these cards? Like, what happens if, I left it too long? And you have a higher chance of losing data if you think you don't have to back up more data. You could lose a terabyte rather than 256 or 128 gigs.
Sure.
And right now, I guess I haven't used it because now I have the A7 IV and I don't have the really high 600 megabyte per second codecs of the A7S III.
Yeah.
But those codecs are nice. They edit really easily. They're huge, but man, computer can chew through them super fast. Yeah, it's interesting, the storage thing. I would like to see that take off. I'm surprised that they're still doing the Type B card, but I guess it's good that they didn't just do 2 Type B CF Express and tell you to go eat sand, I guess.
Yeah. Other than that, the Z8 looks great. It is basically, if I was still on Nikon, this would be the camera I would have finally upgraded to. The Z7s and the Z6s just didn't seem like enough camera, like you said. And I feel like D850 users across the globe are pretty equally sharing that sentiment. And this is finally like, okay, Nikon, you finally did it. Time to move. The F-mount glass is legendary, has been for a long time, and there's not been an issue for a lot of Nikon shooters to hold out. So they finally created a reason. I would say there's nothing about this camera that really disappoints, such as there's nothing that we hoped they would do that they didn't do, really. It's boring. Like, it's not like... There's nothing revolutionary, but they did everything we hoped they would do.
It's only boring because they put their flagship camera in a smaller body, which is like, oh.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sweet. Okay, sure.
Yeah,
like
that's
fine. If Sony did the same, could you imagine if they just took the A1 and just like put it into a $4,000 body? They're like, oh, well.
Yeah, Sony can't do that now because they've got a bad reputation with some similar aspects. Nikon did it and just gained goodwill.
Yeah. Well, they also haven't, tried to put all these camera bodies into a bunch of different, like they just like segmented like crazy. And I still don't.
Not only that, but Nikon also does have a reputation of continuing firmware updates for a long time for some of their better, not better, but like higher performing cameras. The D850 got the ability to use CF Express Type B cards years after it was launched through a firmware update. Granted, they promised that basically at launch that it was coming, and it took years, but they did deliver. Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah, I would be really surprised if they release like a new bot, like a Z8 II, short of 2 full years. Like that would blow my mind. Like I don't think they shouldn't have to. They'll be able to push a little bit more on like the Z6 side.
For sure.
It'd be sick to see, 6K, 24p, make it a little bit more of like a 7.4 contender on the Z6 side, and then just let that thing crush what it's doing.
This thing will hold people for years. And honestly, all I see are marketing ploys for, like the Z30s and the Z5s and all those lower end models, compact, super travel friendly. That stuff is going to sell like hotcakes. But the Z8 is pretty much exactly what D850 people had been hoping for. It's here. Well, it's pre-order now. I don't know actually when it's supposed to launch.
Super soon. I really want to see. I really want to see filmmakers start taking this out because you're going to be able to have B-RAW from Blackmagic through the HDMI and stuff like that. This is going to be a stellar filmmaking camera. And again, you don't care about shutter. You just have a very fast sensor on a video camera that can shoot 8K. And that's fantastic. So correct me if I'm wrong. My brain is spacing. This is the one that has the 2 USB-C ports, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
one for data, one for power.
So you can have a USB-C port from a sick, huge D-tap off of a V-mount battery that's powering a external model. You could kit this thing out beast mode style for 4K and for $4,000, not 4K resolution. But yeah, and it's going to be incredible. Shooting tons of RAW, ProRes, all that stuff. You'll be able to make beautiful films with this thing. It's going to be sick. The oversampled 4K is going to be excellent. If you want 8K, it's there. Yeah, super awesome. So
one little anecdote I did hear was Jared and Steven they were talking about using it. They got it about a month before the announcement. Yep. Steven specifically noted that after recording, I'm not sure which codec or anything like that. I can't remember that. But after recording, he pulled the card out and he said it was like the hottest card he had ever felt in his life. He felt like he had to play hot potato because it was going to actually burn his hand. Yeah. Which is interesting.
Well, I mean, that's was he talking about the CF Express Type B?
I'm not sure.
Because those are insanely hot cards in any camera. So
if that's the case, then maybe not, because I'm sure he deals with lots of different types of cards. But
no, but
I don't know.
It is to be expected. Those things run at thousands of megabytes a second. They're nuts cards. But again, a filmmaker doesn't have to worry about that because they're probably going to shoot RAW external on HDMI. And then the fact that you can shoot that oversampled 4K internally while recording external RAW, just mega. Just freaking mega, dude. It's super cool. Some stuff that I hope to see from the A7S4 now is like being able to power delivery and use like an external SD. Having those two USB-C ports is nuts. Stuff like that. So I mean, maybe we'll see that on like a would-be FX4 in like 10 years. But it's just cool tech. They definitely pushed some boundaries there with the Z8. So kudos to them.
Yeah. Yep. I think you're right too. I don't even think we're going to see news of a Z8 II until like 2025. And I think that's fine. I think this has been a long time coming, and that's fine. We can move on. Did you hear about Pentax?
No.
Did you hear that Pentax is making, and this was news, I don't know, like last summer or the summer before or something like that. They're making a new film camera. And so they put out a little like update on it. And they told us that they were doing multiple, and that the first one they're starting is a compact film camera, 35 mil. And the little update was basically like, hey, we're still here. We're still working on it. Here's like a little update about it. And I guess that they have to put like a film winder, and like it's going to be very hands-on. I was just really glad to see that Pentax is still committed to it, and like they didn't have to cut it because of like post-COVID like losses or something, It's
like 2 years too late.
It doesn't matter, dude.
Like,
it really does not.
I don't know how, like, there's so many great film cameras for like $50 that I don't know what they're gonna do to be able to. We're
talking about a Z8 here. This is like they can take as long as they want, and the film guys are like, we'll wait. We've been waiting forever.
Well, it's because a lot of film people right now that are film photographers, they're like, dude, it's getting so expensive. I've seen more posts on Twitter of people like, I guess I'm going back to doing digital because like it's nuts. Lab costs are high. A bunch of film stock that people enjoyed like doubled. So that's true. It's, again, it would have been really sick if they nailed that in 2020 when everybody was like, we're bored, we're gonna all shoot film.
And but I remember that being an original question when they first announced this, was like, oh, this is cool, but like, the resources for making film and development is like not getting bigger, like that's dwindling. So do you have a solution for that too? And there really was no answer to that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the reasons why I'm going to do some probably Ilford, and then I want to try like some Tri-X, like 3200, like the old Daniel Milner, is because being able to process black and white is going to be a lot easier for me to do at home than color negative film. So, but I have to learn to enjoy it because I'm not a black and white shooter. This is why we are doing the black and white submissions as our start, because it's just not something that I see in. I don't eat that up. So, but to enjoy film for a longer amount of time, if I start to get the kit now and learn how to process that black and white from home, then film won't completely die, because there will be Ilford HP5 and stuff probably until I'm tired of photography altogether. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure 10 years from now there will still be expired Ilford that's like fine, and you can totally shoot it. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough call, man. I'm seeing a lot of film people. Sorry, Peter McKinnon did his like shooting film video like a week ago.
I didn't watch.
There's not a whole lot to the video. It's relatively boring. But the people that are like, oh, here we go. Like, there's so many film people that were just shitting on this man because I assume he probably got like a Leica M6 or something, because he's been shooting his like SL2 and all that other stuff, or his what is it, the Q. And yeah, there's a lot of, it's like, all right, I guess that's it. We're not going to be able to find good film stock anymore. It's all going to get washed up, and it's going to be the death of the trend. So it's funny to see somebody who is so like, I would attribute Peter McKinnon to making more photography content creators on the YouTube platform than almost anyone else. Because 2017, when he took off, is when a ton of people were like,
absolutely,
he's like the Casey Neistat of photography. Because like Casey Neistat was a filmmaker, and he really brought the like, photography's cool. He was that was that guy. And now he's gonna be like the arbiter of the death of film. Just interesting. I don't think that's true. That's really intense hyperbole and stuff. But a lot of people are like, well, that's it. GG. Everybody's gonna think it's really cool to go scoop up all these. It's like it was already happening, and now it's just a lot.
It was already. Yeah, you're right. For your knowledge, if you do come up next Sunday, if you travel through Travers, the camera shop, last I was there, did have 4 or 5 different film options, and Tri-X was definitely one of them if you want to pick one up there.
Cool. Yeah, I have to check it out. I haven't been to enough camera shops in a while. I haven't checked out Norman Camera in a long time here. I normally pop around there to see what kind of used stuff they have. I always check to see if they have any neat used M42 glass that I could scoop up from them. So
sure.
Right on. That's all I got for you today. I'm going to get out of here soon, so I'm going to wrap this up. If you're still listening, thank you. We would love you to have some time to share this. We would love to get some reviews, some feedback. In the show description, I have a link to an email address. If you would like to participate in our photo sharing, we are doing black and white. Next week, for sure, we are going to go over those images on the show. That would be lovely. Thank you for listening. That's all I got for you.
See you guys.